Welcome to another Tableau video, and in this one I'm going to show you how to get a Tableau job. Let's go. Alright, so this question comes in from Prasenjit, and he says, I've completed your course on Udemy and struggling to get a job. By the way, the new course is the one on Jellyman Education, so check the link below. So that is the upgraded 2023 version. And he says, could you please help? So I've thought about creating a course on how to get a job because I've actually coached a lot of people on how to get jobs because I've been on both ends. I've applied for work and I went through that phase where you just can't get a job to now where it's like you apply for one or two jobs and you get them, right? And it's not luck. There are things that you are probably not doing, mistakes that you're making that I'll go through in this video. I've got like 10 tips that you guys can do. But I do want to build a course, and the course is going to be a really detailed look on how to actually get a job and how the actual system works for getting a job. Now, obviously, I'm talking about jobs in Melbourne, Australia, but speaking to a lot of other people, I think some of these tips will translate to wherever it is you're from. Obviously, depends on the job market, depends on how many people are applying, how many jobs are available. There's all those things as well. So, kind of take that into account. So let me show you what I've got. And I literally put this together in a few minutes. And the reason I can is because I've been through this so many times with people to help them get jobs, and even to the point where negotiating for salaries and benefits and all that, but then also how to succeed once you're in the job and all those things, right? So let's get started. So how to get a job in analytics, kind of more specifically Tableau, but maybe it's not Tableau, maybe it's something else in IT, right? So the first tip is apply for only a few jobs rather than too many. So I'll tell you a story. I met this guy and I kind of had known him for a while, and he said, look, I don't want to work here anymore. I'm looking for a new job, right? He didn't work for me. And he goes, Jed, I've applied for 50 jobs and no one's calling me back. And I said, 50 jobs? Like, think of it this way. If you were going to go out and pick up some girls, okay? I like this example because it's very similar. Let's say you're going to pick up some girls, and there are 50 girls, and you're going to divide your entire evening across all those 50 girls. How special do you think they'll really feel? Not very special. So when I looked at his resume, it wasn't customized, it wasn't specific to the job he was applying for. And if you're the person seeing that document, like this person's not even writing in regards to what we're looking for, straight away you're out, right? So what you want to do instead is pick maybe 3 jobs. And these 3 jobs need to be jobs you really, really want. You really want. Now, I know they say don't put all your eggs in one basket, but the reason you only want to do a few is because you want to put way more effort into just a few rather than a little bit of effort in too many, right? And what happens is the application that you give for just those 3 is of such a high quality that when you're competing with other people trying to get the same job, your resume is much better, your cover letter is much better, your engagement's much better. You do some more things on top of just those things, which I'll go through in a second, right? And that will significantly increase your chances of being hired just by giving a much better application by doing less, right? Applying to less. All right. So that's tip number 1. Let's go to tip number 2. Right? Make the first move. Oh man, I see this mistake all the time. So most people do this, right? They'll write a generic resume, they'll write a generic cover letter, and all they'll have at the top is dear space. And every application, they'll just change that first part. You will never get a job that way. That's just not how it works, right? The other part to that is they'll have this generic resume and they'll send it out on seek.com or LinkedIn, and they'll go attach send, attach send, attach send. You're never going to get a call. You're never going to get a call if you do that method. What you want to do, and this is, by the way, these first 1, 2, 3, 4 tips, this is before you even write anything. This is before you write a resume, before you do a cover letter, before you do any of that stuff, right? This is one of those tricks that has gotten me jobs, is you make the first move. So what you do is when you see a job advertisement, right, instead of applying right away, look for a phone number in the job description. If you can't find one, what you do is you look for the company on LinkedIn or something like that, and you hunt for someone that's from human resources or the same department, or even the person who posted it, and you keep looking until you find a phone number. When you get the phone number, you call it. So you call it and you say, listen, I've seen that job opening and I'm really interested in it. And I want to know kind of why are you hiring? Like what's the problem you're trying to solve? And, who is it for? And kind of what's the bit? And basically, you're asking them questions of what the role is. Now, what this does is number one, it shows initiative. And number two, you've just secured your first interview. That first phone call is actually your first interview. If you are looking at your competitors who are also applying, let's say there's 50 other people, most of them, if not all of them, will not make that first move. So you're already ahead of them just by making that first phone call. So when you collect that information from that phone call, you use that information in your resume and cover letter. They'll say something like, oh, we're having a really big problem with some of the assembly lines, blah, 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 in detail. That information may not be in the job description. So if you put that into your cover letter, you're already at a big advantage against other people trying to get the same job. That's why you want to make the first move and do that phone call, right? Because you can get insider information, right? That gives you an advantage. All right. So the next tip, and I don't think I numbered these right. I think I got these in reverse. Three and then two. Okay. Research. Why are they hiring? So I touched on this previously, which is when a company goes, we need more people, they don't need more people just because they want more people to talk to. They need more people because they have a very specific problem they are hiring for. We need to solve X, and you need to figure out what X is before you do any application. Because if you can figure that out, it means you can do a lot more research after that, right? For example, let's say they go, well, we've just installed Tableau, for example, because it's a Tableau channel. We've just installed Tableau and we don't have many developers, and we need someone to come in who knows how to use Tableau and how to build the platform and how to teach people. They won't write that in their job description. So what you can do is before the application, before the cover letter and before the interview, you can research all of that. So you cater your application to the why are they hiring, right? That is a massive advantage. So when the person, from HR who's reading hundreds of resumes a day goes, we need X. And this person is saying, I can do X. And here's the proof. Here's my evidence. Great. Interview. That's it. That's how it works. Okay. Next tip. This one, I would have to say, is for mostly women. I see this happen with women more so, and I believe, and that's not sexism or anything. There's some statistics out there that say that this is actually what happens. So when a job description comes out, they say you need to know this, 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 this. You need to know this tool, this tool, this tool, this tool. And what some women do is they'll look at it and they'll be like, "Well, I can't do A," and they'll throw out the application. That's not how it works. Now, men do this as well, but here's a little tip about job descriptions. Most of the time, the people who write it don't know what they need. Okay? Take that in for a second. When they write those job descriptions, sometimes they just write everything under the sun. They just say, well, we need someone who does Tableau and does SQL and does Google Analytics and then does advanced writing and then Adobe Analytics and then BigQuery and then SQL. That person does not exist. Nobody knows all that stuff, right? But what they're trying to do is they're trying to filter out anyone who's kind of a rubbish applicant. Don't fall for this trick. So what you want to do is, if you see a job description, if you can do, I'd say anywhere like around 50% of what they're doing in the job description, apply. Because in this day and age, when you hire someone, you're not hiring them purely for technical skills. You're hiring them because they have an attitude to learning and solving problems. Because nobody knows everything applying for a job. What I want when I'm hiring someone is they have a really good attitude, they want to learn, they can admit when they've made mistakes, they don't pretend like they know everything. So when they come on board, they go, what do I need to learn? And they'll pick it up and they'll learn it and they'll solve it and they'll share the knowledge to other people. Okay? So you don't need to know everything before applying to a role. All right. So now finally you get up to the application. I'm getting the feeling this is going to be like a 20-minute video, but that's all right. So and plus, this is really for Presajit. I think I said his name right, Presajit, and anyone else who's really struggling with getting a job, right? So now comes writing your application. So let's do the first one. So degrees aren't what they used to be. Now they used to be really, really important, but here's some history. So back in the day, not everyone could get a degree. So if we imagine 100,000 people and only 5,000 can get degrees, those 5,000 have a big advantage on everyone else because, they're special, they're rare. Yeah. So what the industry found was like that 95,000 said, well, we should get degrees. So they all got degrees. Now everybody has degrees again. So if everyone has degrees, well, then everyone's equal. So that 5,000 people who had degrees go, we need master's degrees. So they all get master's degrees, right? Now they have an advantage. They get all the jobs. Then the 95,000 go, well, we need master's degrees, right? So they all get master's degree. And then everyone keeps learning up and up and up, right? And what they found is just because you have more certification doesn't actually mean you're good at your job. It just means you're good at school. That's it. So a lot of jobs these days don't even ask for degrees. In particular, IT. IT very rarely care about degrees because what happens in the interview process is they'll go, do you know this software, blah, 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 and you can say yes or no, but more often than not, they're going to test you. So you have to do some sort of SQL testing or Tableau testing or showcase, something like that. So if you're presenting Tableau to me, I know if you're making stuff up. I know if you don't know what you're talking about because I'm, for example, the expert in Tableau. So you can't fake it. Okay. So there's no point saying you have a degree. What we really care about is demonstratable skills. That's it. And being truthful with what your level is. I've had people that I've hired and they said, listen, I'm only 3 months into Tableau. And I actually think that's a great thing because I'm like, oh, great. That means you haven't learned any bad habits and I can teach you the rest. Right. So not knowing everything, not having a super, super fancy degree doesn't mean anything. Right. It's your attitude, a positive can do attitude. All right. Next one, resumes. I remember meeting this guy and he goes, I can't get jobs. And I said, let me see your resume. And it was 7 pages long. It was so dense, writing to the edges. It was horrible. You got to think about this, right? So when you work in HR, you're getting hundreds of resumes every single day. And they found that I think you only get, was it 4 minutes or 4 seconds? I think it was 4 seconds. They spend about on average 4 seconds on a resume. So they'll see one. If it's too much writing, delay, whatever, right? They don't care. So you really want to respect the time of who's reading this. So here's the key. When you did all the research before and you know the company, you know why they're hiring, the problems they're trying to solve, you know that. Only put that in your resume. Don't put anything else that's not useful. Only put the things they need to know. Because what happens is they upload that resume a lot of the times into software, and the software looks at keywords and matches it to the selection criteria. And if it matches, then you get points, and they go, well, let's interview this person. So you want to make sure that your resume is matching selection criteria, the things that they want, that they need in an applicant. And if you do that, you'll be fine. 1 to 2 pages max. The most important stuff is on the first page. I typically, for the first page, will say, let's say they want Tableau stuff. I'll say on the first page, Tableau analytics, and you say what problem. So there was a problem that happened. This is why it was really, really bad. This is what I did. And then this is the result of what I did. It saved money, saved time, saved cost, whatever. Several examples of that on the first page. And then on the second page, you can put some kind of secondary information. Things like maybe you can put your degrees and that kind of stuff, but it's not a big deal. The software that you know and your proficiency. But it's really the first page that is the most important. You want to write in there, make sure you have your contact details, your LinkedIn profile is updated. What else? You want to say anything like if you're a citizen. What else? I think that's the main stuff. Yeah, just make sure they're able to contact you. Okay, cover letter. All right, so we're coming to the end now. So cover letter. Some people think a cover letter just repeats your resume. That is not what a cover letter does. A resume shows that you have the technical aptitude for the role. I can do Tableau. I can build visualizations. I can connect to data. I can write SQL. That. Those are your technical stuff. Cover letter is your opportunity to show them, why do you want this job? Do you want it just for the money? Do you want it for fame? Or do you want it because it's always been your dream to do analytics, or you've just come to, I had one girl that I coached, and her why was, I've just come to the country. I've been working really hard, gaining lots of experience, doing a lot of courses because my son was just born and I want to give him a life that I never could coming from a third world country. Man, if you read that as a um what's it called, an interviewer, you're like, the motivations of this person are different. They will succeed because they have to for their child. That's the why. That's the human part. So you want to be very clear on like why you're doing this, okay? So with the cover letter, I tend to break it up into like three sections. The first section is, why do you want to apply for this role? So that's kind of like a bigger chunk. The next one is, what is your plan when you arrive on day one? And this is very, very important. I remember picking this up in a book. So in that part, you want to say, when I arrive, I want to meet with all the stakeholders. I want to learn the existing processes. I want to understand the gaps. I want to find out who the key people are in that cause this problem, whatever, whatever. You want to go, this is my strategy when I arrive. Because managers, they don't want someone they have to baby. They want someone that when they come in, they do the job. They just get it done. Whatever they need to know, they'll figure it out. Right? And then the third part is, you want to be active. So you want to say something like, I will contact you in 1 week's time to discuss this. So you don't want to say something passive like, let me know if you're interested. No, you say, I'll call you in 1 week to discuss this. That's it. Yeah. And expect my call, blah, 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 whatever you want to say. Okay. All right. So let's say you do all that and you're lucky enough to get an interview. That is fantastic. So now you have to prepare for your interview. Now, here are some tips on the interview process. Things that I've seen that are just a try. I've seen one girl apply and she turned up and it looked like she just came from the gym. It was disgusting. Yeah, she was like in active wear. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, we said no immediately. I didn't even write anything in my notepad at all. And she had a good application, but she just let us down in the interview part, right? So, firstly, when it comes to interview, you have to think of it as a performance. You're not just going there to meet someone, right? You are going to meet your future wife's father and asking for permission for marriage. You want to be well dressed, clean, shaven, best behavior. You want to put an image of, you are the purest human that you can think of, right? But you have fault. Okay? So don't go in there with ego or being cocky, but you want to go in there with confidence saying, I can do these things, but these things I still want to learn. Okay? And if they say something, do you know about this stuff? Don't pretend you do, because we're in IT. It's a technical field. If you happen to be speaking to someone who's in, let's say, a SQL expert for 30 years, which has happened to me, there's nothing you can say that will impress them. They know everything. They were probably there when it was written. So don't pretend you know something more than you do. Okay? The other part you want to say is, and this is the be human part, is you always want to give this feeling of, you know, whether I get the job or not is not on my mind. What I really care about is, this sounds like a job where I can learn. This sounds like an exciting job where I can solve problems and contribute to a company that I think is doing good things. That's all. That should be all your focus. I just want to give back. I just want to help others. I just want to solve problems. It's not about, well, how much are you going to pay me? I remember this one guy who came in and he goes, um, how much are you going to pay me for all this? You know? And it's just not, first of all, it's not the right time to discuss that, but it's also not a good way to go in. If another person who was applying was like, I'm just really excited. I just want to learn. Sounds like a fantastic company. I use your product all the time. I would hire that person and pay them whatever they want because they've got that right attitude. Okay. All right. Tip number 9. And this is where I think I see a lot of people make a mistake. Rejection doesn't mean the end. So what they do is they go through that whole process and they get a call. Sorry, you didn't get the job. And then that's it. And I speak to them and go, did you call them back and say why you didn't? And they go, no. It's like, oh, you idiot. So when you get rejected, it actually doesn't mean the end, because you got to think of this. Sometimes you have a really good interview, and they really love you. But for some reason, they just had to go with someone else. Sometimes they want to hire from within the company. Sometimes there's a budget change. Sometimes there's a management change. Sometimes, most of the time, it's got nothing to do with you, right? So if you had a really good interview process and they go, sorry, we can't hire you, what you want to do is use that as an opportunity, right? And this is what most people do not do. So you want to say, well, listen, thank you so much for meeting with me. I still learned a lot, even though, I didn't get the job. But what I'd like to know is why you didn't choose me. Sometimes they'll say, actually, we had a change to our headcount, or we actually needed someone who's more of an expert in this software, and you just didn't have that. Whatever the reason, you want to think of that gap, and either you're going to work on it, all right, if it's something you can work on, or you just take it on board. Now, here's why it's important to have that initiative. These HR people, right, their job is to hire people for the right role. So you may not be right for that role, but if you go out on a good note and they like you and they remember you, what happens is maybe next week they go, oh hey, there's a new job we need to fill. Remember that guy named Jed? He had a great interview. Why don't we get him in for that? Right? So then they call you up and they go, listen, there's another job. Do you want to apply for it? And sometimes they'll just skip the interview process because you already done one, and they'll just kind of like accelerate you forward. So it doesn't mean it's the end. And I've seen that happen a number of times. And actually it happened to me as well. So you also want to ask them, are there any other roles that you guys are advertising or whatever it might be? So use every single experience as a way to kind of get a little bit closer to finding the right opportunity for you. Okay. Now, the very last one, right? Now, this is kind of around negativity. Um, it's very easy to get really bummed out when you don't get the job. And I've been in the situation where your bills need to be paid, your rent is late, you're running out of food, you can't pay for petrol, you can't afford the train. Things get really, really desperate. Okay? What you're gonna have to do when it comes to interview, you have to put that all aside. Because if you go in there smelling of desperation, you will not get the job. So it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. I had this one guy who, in the first 5 minutes of the job, he's like, "Man, I just really need this job, man. Like, I'm really struggling here." And I feel for the guy, but the thing is, and this is gonna sound like really cold, but this is supposed to be a professional work environment. And when you think of corporations, when they request someone to, when they're looking for someone to fill a role, theoretically, they do not care who you are. What they really care about is, can your skills solve that problem? That's it. And if you give any feeling of like weakness, or your life is kind of unstable, that is enough for someone to be like, I don't know if it's worth the trouble. So you just have to put that aside, right? And every single step, right? Use it as an opportunity of like, why didn't that part work? Okay, let's change that. Why didn't that part work? All right, let's change that. Why didn't that part work? And you use that. And then what you also want to do is, every person that you speak to, everyone that you interact with, speak to them of like, oh yeah, I applied for this job, but I didn't get it. What do you think? Or speak to your manager, or speak to your colleagues, or speak to randoms on like LinkedIn for advice and tips on what you're doing wrong. Because it could just be, and I'll use a fishing analogy, right? Because I do a lot of fishing. Sometimes you have the wrong bait. Sometimes you've put the wrong hook on, the wrong size hook. Maybe your line is too bright. Maybe it's too thick. Maybe the length of your lines is too short, too long. Maybe your sinker is too heavy. Maybe your rod is too long, too short. So what you're doing is you're calibrating your application technique, right? And the only way you can calibrate it is to keep testing it. That's it. So that's why I say tip number 10 is experience. Just keep doing it over and over and over again, and you'll get better. And instead of applying for 100 jobs, you're applying for 50, and then 20, and then 10, then 5. Then eventually, when you get really good, they start calling you.